Good evening. Welcome to the first Marin City Council workshop for 2021. Good evening. Welcome to the first Marin City Council workshop for 2021. Lead us in the pledge. We're going to begin with our pledge to the flag, and I'm going to have Councilman Vigliotti lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, flag under the United States of America, indivisible, and to the republic and justice stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilman. Let the records reflect that all members are present and accounted for. Thank you, Councilman. I'm going to begin this evening by saying a few words. All members are present and accounted for. I'm going to begin this evening by saying a few words. A three-time mayor. We lost 16-year councilperson here in the city, and I don't think you could point out anyone who's done more for the city of Taneytown. 16-year councilperson here in the city, and I don't think you could point out anyone who's done more. And I ask that everyone please keep the family in your thoughts and prayers. It was a tremendous loss for the city. They were preparing themselves for it. Please keep the family in your thoughts and prayers. Sometime, but it's still a shock when it does happen. I know so that was, they were preparing themselves for it. An unfortunate start to the new year. He had been in declining health for some time, but it's still a shock when it does happen. Prayers. So that was. In addition, I do want to speak briefly about the events of today. In your thoughts, you've been watching the news. In addition, I do want to speak briefly about the events kind of in disarray at this time. If you've been watching the news, there have been I guess seemingly what should have started as protests kind of in disarray. Protests escalated something much more than storming the Capitol building. Seemingly what should have started as protests, I support protests, escalated something much more. What we're seeing now are the Capitol building, things like that. So please, I support passion. I support the first responders. What we're seeing now are neither DC who so please seemingly under attack at this time. The first responders. I think there's a better way to go about things than what's happening there. In my seemingly under attack at this time. I just want to put that on the record. A better way to go about things than what's happening there, in my opinion, is unacceptable. Councilman Vigliotti, did you have something you'd like to put that on the record, just to be very clear?
Mr. Mayor, I can do it now, or I can do it later.
Councilman Vigliotti, did you have something you'd like to add?
First, I want to associate myself with your Mr. Mayor, I can do it now, or I can do it later. But put out a post on Facebook. First, I want to associate myself with your comments about what happened today. And put out a post on Facebook praying and hoping there's a way to handle things and there's a way to not handle things. And I'm certainly praying and hoping what happened today is not acceptable. And given that we ourselves dealt with something a year and a half ago, this sort of thing does not acceptable. And given that there's a way we ourselves dealt with peacefully protest something, and there's a way this sort of thing does hit close to home. There's a way to and then with respect to your comments about Mayor Flickinger, I want to associate myself with those as well. And then with respect to comments about Mayor Flickinger, I want to associate myself with those as well. Could read them now or later. And I've prepared a couple of written words, and I
will accept your
could
words
read them
now
or later.
All right,
thank you, Mr. Mayor. How you feel would be best served by the agenda. So when you talk about small towns like ours, certain things resonate. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The places, the roads, the homes, the buildings, small towns like the memories, certain things resonate. The way the setting sun glows, the places, the roads, the homes, the buildings. You also think of people, the memories, the institutions. You think of friends and neighbors, the setting sun glows who make a difference in any number of ways. You also volunteering to community events. You think of friends and neighbors, and you think of citizens. And sometimes you come across someone who makes such a difference, volunteering to community events to elect part of that town. And sometimes the late Mayor Bob Flickinger makes such a difference and was an institution in an integral part of that town. He said few words. The late Mayor Bob Flickinger was such a man. He said do this, he did in and of himself. He earned his respect through hands-on commitment. He said few words, but his words were powerful. He volunteered wherever a hand was needed. He said do this, you did. As a mayor, especially, he earned his respect through hands-on in the daily workings of town. He volunteered wherever a hand was needed. He was the kind of leader who, upon discovering the light was out, directly involved in the daily workings of town. Personally went out to find. He was the kind of leader who, upon discovering the light was out, or a street even after his elected life personally went out to find a utilities crew to handle the job. He was the kind of man to which men even after his elected life ended, his community service and an example. Indeed, he was the kind of man to which men of my generation among the many things Mayor Flickinger spoke to me about over the years. Indeed, so to lose someone like politics were among the many things Mayor Flickinger spoke to me about. It's like removing a single strand from a tapestry. So to lose someone like him, that strand interweaved with each one that it touched. It's like removing a single strand from a tapestry. Everything has changed without him around. Too late that strand interweaved. So I pay my respects to Mayor Flickinger. Wish him well in heaven. Everything has changed without him around. And my deepest condolences. So I pay my respects to Mayor Flickinger, who herself is an integral part of our community. Offer prayers to his loved ones and my deepest condolences to his wife, Fairy, who herself
Thank you, Councilman. I appreciate those kind words.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
he will definitely be missed, but never. Thank you, Councilman. I appreciate those kind words. He will definitely be missed, but never forgotten. We're going to start with review of the minutes from the December 9th and moving into 14th meeting, if we would. Are there any suggestions or comments on the minutes as December 9th and December 14th meetings? Are there any suggestions or comments on the minutes as they are presented? Satisfied? Mayor Pro Tem Foster, did you have something?
Yes. On,
Everyone is satisfied. Mayor Pro Tem Foster, did you have something?
I guess,
Yes,
page 2,
on-
under
Trying to find what page.
new business. I guess page 2,
Number
under new
3.
business.
Where it
Number,
talks about leaving out added that the designs are still
3.
being finalized.
and that,
Where
there
it
are two
talks
that's,
about
it should be
leaving out added
that,
that the
there
designs
will
are
be.
still being finalized.
and that, there are two that's, it should be that there will be.
Okay. So removing the comma and the second that and replacing it with the word there. Very
Yes.
good. So removing the comma. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Is there anything else from you for the minutes? There. Very good.
Yes.
That's all you have. Very good. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Anyone else have anything else from you for the minutes as presented? That's all you have. Very good. Okay. Anyone else have any comments on the minutes as up for approval on Monday evening? I'll now ask the council if there is anything on this agenda further. They will be up that for approval on Monday evening for them this evening. I'll now ask the council if there is anything on this agenda that presents a conflict of interest for them this evening. We're going to move into our resolutions, ordinances, and agreements. For introduction this month, we have resolution. Going to move into our resolutions, ordinances, and agreements. The Bay Restoration for introduction this month, we have any comments on that, or would you like to hear anything from the Bay Restoration hardship exemption? Are there any comments on that, or would you like to hear anything from staff before we discuss? Okay, I believe this is discussed, not introduced, discussed last month. Councilman Vigliotti, did you have
I just wanted to reiterate my comments from last time, that I think this is a good thing that we're doing, and I think that this will, certainly benefit. I just wanted to reiterate my comments from last time, so I think this is a good thing that we're doing. Again, I think it's right that we're, certainly having this, presenting this before us this evening. So I think that, again, I think it's right that we're
very good. I'm going to ask
having this, presenting
City
this
Manager,
before
was
us
there
this
anything
evening,
that
so.
changed from the discussion last month to what's being presented to us now? I'm going to ask City Manager,
No,
was
we
there
just,
anything that changed from the discussion last month to what's being presented to us now?
There was still one reference in last month's draft. We just to the got rid of the language that I think there was still one reference in last month's draft. No, this is as it was presented with you last month.
Okay.
Getting my resolutions modifications to it. No, this is as it was presented with you last month.
That. Okay. I'll give council one more opportunity. Any discussion on this important resolution? Appreciate that. I'll give council one more opportunity. Any discussion on for introduction this important Monday evening, and then will be put forward for approval next month. That is slated for introduction. Moving in Monday evening up for adoption will be put forward for approval next month. 07-2020. Amendment to items up for adoption on Monday will be ordinance 07-2020. Kind of the trio. Amendment to chapter 153 park impact. They were introduced. Now we'll be looking to adopt. Is there any kind of the trio of these on this ordinance? They were introduced. Go ahead. Now we'll be looking to adopt.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
On this ordinance.
I'd asked the question last
Councilman
month
Vigliotti, go ahead, sir.
About the thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Maybe Jay, you or Jim. I'd asked the question last month to some degree about personally, I'm still a little unclear about whether passing this means that it was to some degree to personally, I'm still a little unclear about whether passing this means that it would still apply. And so I'm just looking for some like a development in progress right now. For example,
your clarification is such.
And so I'm just looking for some.
This will go into effect immediately upon pass. So your clarification is such that has not received a building permit. This will go into effect immediately upon pass. In terms of active development, any house that has not received a building permit, they've already received their building permits. So in terms of active developments, regards with Taneytown Crossing and Meadowbrook, received their building permits, so this would not apply. Would be subject to this. Regards to Meads Crossing and Meadowbrook, anything that has not received an email that was circulated from one of the developers asking that they be exempted. So I would like to ask the council, received an email that was circulated from one of the developers to make a decision on, or would you like that developer to join the call on Monday? If that email suffices for you to make a decision on, or would you like by consensus to join whether you would like to base your decision off the email, present their case, or have them come and present their case? And I'll go by consensus if you whether you would like to base your decision off the email or have them come and present their case.
Mr. Mayor, how would you like us to respond? Like thumbs up, thumbs down, or?
Well, I guess each of you just kind of let me know
Mr. Mayor, how would you like us
if you have no feelings one way or the other.
Thumbs up, thumbs down
as well. But well, I guess each of you just kind of let me know. Is there anyone who is good with the email and is comfortable making a decision, but not tonight, but making a decision? Is there anyone who is good with the email and is comfortable making a decision, wanting to be exempt, but making a decision based on that email alone? So you're comfortable just having an email. Is there anyone that would prefer to have them make their case to us on Monday evening? So you're comfortable just having the email. Is there anyone that would prefer to have them make their case there to us on Monday? So I believe when we move forward with the final decision, Councilor Vigliotti, you are in the minority there. I expect that there may be additional emails coming from the developer. Will be based on the directed to you directly. I expect that there may be additional emails coming from the developer, but keep in mind that to you directly or through us, we'll be sure you get them if something else does come in. But keep in mind that request has been. Was there something else on that? I believe that covers your question. Is that correct, Councilman?
Yes, thank you very much.
Something else on that? I believe that covers your question. Is that correct, Councilman?
Yes, now,
yes, thank you very much.
the majority of us
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Foster.
are okay with the email. Yes, now, where it pertains to the majority of us
Yes.
are okay with the email. Can we expect anybody else to come to back and want the same consideration? Can we expect anybody else to come, say, Meads Crossing and want the same consideration?
Well, I think.
And do we just
everyone has been made aware.
say
The city
Meads
manager did
Crossing
speak
and
to
that's
them.
it? Okay.
Well, depending on the decision the council makes, everyone has been made aware. May determine whether we hear from another developer or not.
Okay.
The other developer depending on the decision the council makes regarding Meads Crossing, may I'm not going to speak as to their comfort level on it directly. Meadowbrook. If the council decides I'm not going to speak as to for Meads Crossing level on it directly, Meadowbrook to want the same treatment. If the council decides to waive it for Meads Crossing, I think you can expect Meadowbrook to want the same treatment. Considering that it should be across the board. We have two developers in town who are doing whatever decision is made. Very good work for us building nice houses, considering that it should be across the board. But we do need to understand who are doing the reason for this. Very good work for us building nice houses, bring people in. But we do need to understand. And with that, the reason for this, we'll go ahead and do a little tangent. Want to treat it. The ordinance real quick. Right. And as it's set up now with the DARAs, we'll go ahead and do a little tangent off of the ordinance real quick. As it's set up now with the DARAs, Meads Crossing fee in lieu of, it's not the impact fee, I think it's more per dwelling. That was negotiated fee in lieu a couple years ago. The impact fee, I think it's more of a fee in lieu of. The Meadowbrook, negotiated, I believe, is currently doing a couple years ago. 1,500. Is that correct, Mr. Weeper? Yes, it is. Meadowbrook, so they're currently doing, I believe, is currently doing 1,500. Is that correct? So, Mr. Weeper, yes, it is. Passing, if we so they're currently doing applicable to both of them. That will add to both. So with this passing, if we make it applicable to both of them, the DARA that will add in a way that it sets out the fees they pay, but it also says and any other fees. The DARA that the city structured in a way that it sets out the fees they pay, but it also says word that better. I'm at a loss of how to word that. That the city.
Well, I think the way the DARA is,
Jay, can you
says
can you word that better? I'm at a loss of how to word that properly.
That applies across the board. I think the way the DARA is already been addressed. If a fee is enacted that applies across the board, so I think that's already been addressed, then it would apply.
That's exactly it. Thank you.
So I think that's the
so it does lock in their fees for what they're paying for, but this is a new fee, and under the DARA, they would be subject to. So it does lock in their fees for what they're paying for, but this is a new fee, and under the DARA, they would be subject to.
Not to be too obtuse, but I want to put a fine point on this so that it's clear what we're expecting. Thoughts. We have several issues, but I want to put a fine point on this so that it's clear what we're expecting. The actual park impact fee. We have several issues that we're merging together. Do we need this park impact fee? Do you like the way it's structured? Do you like the way it's calculated? So that in your mind, one core. Do we need this park impact fee? Do you like the way it's structured? Do you like the way it's calculated? And I want to put a finer point on that is core. It's applicability. And then the second decision that you already are going to make, and I want to put a finer point on that is clear. It's applicability to people who are already already one issue. Building. The meets crossing and it's clear it's to people who are going to give a building fact when you said that's we're good with the email. The meets crossing you said we don't need them to speak in person. In the fact when you said I take that to mean we're good with the you don't need any more. That's what you said. We don't need them to speak in person. You're good with their comments. What I take that to mean is as opposed to you don't need any more comments from their comments. You're good with their comments and you're going to exempt them. So as opposed to my question you're good so that if they're watching out there is and I'm not sure that so the council. My question so that if they're watching out there is I'm not sure that the council has said that still has to be debated regarding discussed. Right, that's what everybody's on whether it applies. And so one of the things that would be helpful is you've had their email, right? That's what everybody's on. We're going to decide this on Monday. And so one of the things that would be helpful is you've had their email to show is that if we're going to decide this on Monday, because maybe it is pretty clear, and this is the ground that everybody's covered, but I like what the story is because Meadowbrook pretty clear. This is the ground that everybody's covered, but so they are paying the open space impact fee. Meadowbrook did not provide open space, and under this, we're saying they'll pay the extra fee. I call this the swing normal. That's okay. The development fee on top. And under this, we're saying they'll pay the extra fee. I call this the swing not paying the development fee on top of it. And that was the only fee we had at crossing though, and was not paying them and said, the open space fee. There is an impact, and that was the only fee we had at the time. And their came back to them and basically saying, we provided you with some open space, so we're going to pay their email to you basically is saying, and in their mind, provided you with some their email says it's a park impact prorated, so we should be exempt from this park. In their mind, and I think we need to actually pull out some of that stuff. If you guys are going to do a deep dive into this. And I think we need to actually pull out some of that stuff. If you guys are going to do a deep dive, that's what their email was at. But I think it wasn't that of what we said. Probably wasn't deep enough. And if you're not going to allow them to, that's what their email may want these things. But I think it wasn't so. That probably wasn't deep enough. But just to be clear, allow them to make to people that are watching, want these things. That's probably going to be two decisions then. That's my thought. Because you're going to just to be clear, and then you'll deal with applicability. That's probably going to be two decisions then, Mr. Mayor, right?
Yes.
Because you're going to do this, and then you'll deal with applicability.
Let's do this. We've kind of done the sidebar. Let's discuss the ordinance as it is presented. And then we can discuss the finer points of applicability. Let's discuss the ordinance as it is presented. And then is there any discussion on the ordinance as it is presented this evening? Is there any discussion on the ordinance as it is presented this evening? Seems like everyone is satisfied with the ordinance that will be up for adoption Monday evening. Okay. Seems like everyone is satisfied with the ordinance. Since it came as a trio, we're going to knock out the trio before we get back to the applicability. So resolution 2020-14. Since it came as a trio, we're going to knock out the trio before we get back to the applicability. The specific resolution 2020-14 of those fees, park impact fees. This is simply outlining be added to the fee schedule. Are there any questions of those from the council? For clarification, for those watching, they'll be added to the fee schedule. Are there any questions, which is from the council? Would be $1,000 for those watching. In lieu of open space, the park impact fee, which is the new one. Councilman Vigliotti, go ahead, $1,000. The fee in lieu of open space will be $1,500. Councilman Vigliotti, go ahead, sir.
Hold on, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I lost my place. We went ahead to the next one, right? To the.
2020-14.
Hold on, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I lost my place. We went ahead to the next one, right? To the. I apologize. I jumped ahead by one.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Very good.
I have a question, but not on this.
Sticking on 2020-14 park impact fees. Anyone else have comments, questions? Sticking on 2020-14 park impact fees. I'm running out of synonyms. No. Comments, questions? Then we will move on to resolution 2020-15. I'm running out of synonyms. No. Complete fee schedule for 2021. Then we will move on to resolution 2020-15. This is setting the complete fee schedule for 2021. This outlines all the various fees that the city does charge. I believe you may have something. Various services.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. On item number 2, it says the fees listed on the attached fee schedule shall become effective January 1st, 2020. On item number 2, I'm imagining that we have to on the attached fee schedule shall become effective January 1st, 2020. Right? I'm imagining that we have to change the date to for this to work, right?
Obviously, January 1st has passed. We should amend that to, I think the best option would be to set it for obviously January 1st after we intend it to pass. So, which would be, I think the best option would be to set it for, would that be acceptable if we make it that we intend it to pass?
Yes,
which
sir.
would
Mayor.
be January the 12th. I'm sorry, would that be
Mr.
acceptable
Gold.
if we
That
make
is
it that
proper-
instead?
That would be the proper.
Yes, sir, Mayor.
So the 12th would be it.
I'm sorry, the 12th would be it.
That
Very
is
good.
proper. That would
So
be
that
the
change
proper
would be
the day of enactment. So
on
that
for
the
Monday
12th would be
evening,
it.
that amendment, the 12th would be it. Very good. Does
So
anyone else have
that
any
change
questions
would be,
regarding 2020 from Monday evening, that amendment, excuse me? Does anyone else have any questions regarding 2020-15? Hearing none. On that trio, is there any additional input from staff before we get into the applicability?
Okay.
Hearing none. On that trio, is there any additional input from staff before we get into the applicability? So let's talk. Meads Crossing and Meadowbrook. All right. All are satisfied. I think the intention is Monday evening. So there would like to be a decision Meads Crossing and Meadowbrook as to whether you will make this apply. I think the intention is Monday evening. All developers, there would like to be a decision made, however that be, as to whether you will make this apply to the fee all developers, some developers, paying, however that be, is set to pay. Mr. Gullo did point out is essentially a park impact fee. Paying, they did provide open space for phase 2, so therefore they is essentially a park impact fee. They did provide we had for them was that they do pay something, so therefore they did not have to offset the impact on the parks. So in the grand scheme of things, was that they do pay something more of a park impact to offset the impact on the parks. Meadowbrook, so in the grand scheme of things, they chose to not provide open more space, of a park therefore they are paying the fee in lieu of. Meadowbrook, on the other hand, park impact fee would be additional open space, therefore they are paying with the fee in lieu of. I would like to hear some conversation from the council. Park impact fee would be additional for them. How do you feel? With that, I would like to hear some conversation from the council.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Well, the first thing I'll say, because I don't want to drive the conversation too much, I would want to. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. As Jay had mentioned, I would want to see some more of the documentation too much. I would want to have a better sense of, as Jay had mentioned, I would want to see things that he mentioned earlier. Documentation, and of course, I could have a better sense of. I almost feel like to the things that he mentioned earlier, developers would send us additional emails, or maybe we could reach out to them. I almost feel like to your point that maybe the developers would send us additional emails. Yeah, I do not oppose the park impact fees. I'm in favor of park impact any additional thoughts about this as well. I feel like I do not oppose the park impact fees. I'm in favor of park impact fees, but I feel like I need a little more information, if that makes sense.
Any input from anyone else? Okay. I'd like to hear something. Any input from anyone else? I'd like to hear something. I think you're muted, Councilman. Go ahead and try again.
Oh, Mr. Mayor, sorry. Thank you. So we only have limited amount of.
I think you're muted, Councilman. Go ahead and try again.
Going forward, that we can. Sorry, thank you. So we only have limited amount of homes of our park, and going forward, that we can. If you read Lorena's report, offset the developing Bollinger Parks $1 million. If you read Lorena's report, in some which would be hopefully Bollinger Parks, almost half of that would be grants, but. But there's more. Some which will be hopefully almost half. It's not a matter of we don't have enough park land, so we don't have enough developed park. It's not a matter of kids out there right now have enough. There is no land field. We don't have enough developed. They're playing on the outfield. We have kids out there right now. There is no lacrosse field from sand to dirt. They're playing on the outfield. We're not spending a lot of money to. It's dangerous fields that we have now. Sand to dirt really have. We're not spending a lot of money. They've been doing the best that they can. Fix the fields that we have now. Well, because we don't really have very important. They've been doing the best that they can for the true development of our parks. This is not very important playground for the play sets for the true development of our parks and improving what we have to offer playgrounds to our families every 14 years, but and improving what we have to offer as we have limited ability families, not just the kids. We don't have 10,000 homes to all people. So what we have to sort of we have limited ability. Be fair about it and get. We don't have 10,000 homes coming in. So what we have to sort of
Councilman.
Be fair about it and get what we can.
All right, I have a couple thoughts. I'll just see if I can get them in
Councilman Fuller, do you have something for us?
To me, there's a difference between Meads and Meadowbrook. I have a couple thoughts. I'll just see if Meads to me is already paying what they should. To me, there's a difference between put that in the DARA and that's taken care of. Meads to me is already paying. On the other hand, what they should essentially, and they put that in the DARA and I think the fee for the open space. Meadowbrook, on the other hand, or lack of, I should say. Is probably not enough to understand that Meadowbrook really doesn't have that many more, or lack of, I should say, units going in. Is probably this is something that should have been addressed Meadowbrook years really ago. Doesn't have that many more, and I don't units going in. I hate this is something that should have been addressed jump years ago. Say me and I don't essentially mistakes that the council. I hate to. This should have been jump all over. We should have already had park impact fees. We knew essentially mistakes. And I remember the council made prior to me even being on the council. People should have already had park impact. We really ought to do it. We really ought to do it. And I remember so prior to me even being on the council, people talking about we really ought to do it. We really ought to do it. The money to come in. So I don't. We can definitely work see how we can here forward. We might have to get imaginative down the line. The money to come in. Ways to find we can definitely work from here forward. We might have to get imaginative again down the line. If they've already got ways to find this money, but like I said, Meads is already they're giving us what again. If they've already got anyway. About and then Meads is already. I don't oppose doing Meadowbrook, but I don't essentially they would have anyway. Can about chase down anybody else that already. I don't oppose doing Meadowbrook, but I don't has their agreement that we can. If that makes sense. Chase down anybody else that already has their agreements.
So,
if that makes sense.
To clarify, your position is that it would not apply to either. So, to clarify, because they already have your position is
Meads. It wouldn't apply
that
to
it would not apply to
because
either.
They are meeting the requirements.
Because they already have agreements.
Meadowbrook, no, I would revisit. It wouldn't apply to Meads, I don't think. Something maybe not meeting the entire amount. Meadowbrook, I would revisit, but I think that there should be something more coming from entire amount. Again, what they have left. I mean, but there's not a lot more. There should be something more coming from at Meadowbrook. Again, what they have left. I mean, it's still going to be limited. There's not a lot more. We do have the schools, so. The potential is still going to be limited regardless. Other development, we do have the schools. We are going to run out. The potential is still there for those other development. So we might as well, we are going to run out of now of other ways for those developments that we can raise money. So as we might as well, start thinking now of other ways. I'm not saying right now we can raise money. I don't think we should throw it in a closet somewhere like they did years ago. Still progressing with this. I'm not saying right now, but. I don't think we should throw it in a closet somewhere like they did years ago.
You're saying that I don't have a vote on this. When we talk about the fee in lieu of open space, you're saying that I don't have a vote on this. Of course, as we mentioned, did not provide open space. When we talk about the fee in lieu of open space to the city, so they are paying that fee. Of course, as we mentioned, did not provide open space. We have to consider to the city what open space is actually paying that fee. And the realization comes down to we have to consider none of that open space is available. Open space is actually being provided. All of the residents. And the realization comes down to it is none of that open space is available. You're talking about to their pool, all of the residents, their clubhouse, their dog park. It is all of those amenities you're talking about really put in there for their residents, their clubhouse, their dog park being deeded to the city. All of those amenities to be a part of our park really put in for their residents. It is not generally deeded to the city, going to be available to be a part of our park program. So when we talk about open space, is that something the council would actually be available being open space? So when we talk about open space, the residents of the city, is that something the council would actually consider being open space if it were not available to the residents of the city?
And it isn't.
Okay.
It kind of is. I guess to their way of thinking is, even though it's like you said, for their residents. I guess it takes impact off of the park because even though their residents like you said, for their residents and use what they have. It takes impact and don't impact because their residents stay there and use what they have in actuality and don't impact the park.
That they will impact the park. Absolutely. You're right.
When we know in actuality, I bet that's their way of thinking.
That they will
we're
impact
providing
the park.
this for X number of residents. I bet that's they'll use what they have and they won't we're providing this. I think that for X number of residents.
I think you're exactly right.
They'll use what they have and they won't impact the parks. I think that will be their argument.
Councilman Haynes, I think you're exactly right.
Something I think is worth considering with their open space is that it's not going to be something up and running, available for use anytime soon. Like their open space for that, it's not going to be is pretty long, running, available for people that live there now. Like their timeline for that, it's going to is their clubhouse. I don't think is going to be built for a number of years. All of their open space is not parks. I mean, it's going to. Their clubhouse, I don't think, is going to be built for a number of years. All at least for the foreseeable future is going to be on the city's number of years. For the impact, it'll be a while. At least for the foreseeable future, really is going to be on the city's parks more of a long for a decent amount of time. It'll be a while.
And I think that argument, if we were to apply that same logic to Carroll Vista, Right, and I think that their amenities for their residents makes sense. I mean, same logic to Carroll Vista on our parks, but it is much their amenities for their residents makes sense. I mean, obviously, you think about the children that would be parks, but it is much less as opposed to Carroll Vista. Think about that's a very different thing. You think about the children that and what they're providing. We talk about the dog park, the walking trails. That's a very different thing. Obviously, their clubhouse, their pool at Meads Crossing, and what they're providing. We talk about the dog park, the walking trails. I'm hoping that there are children coming in. Obviously, their clubhouse, their pool at Meads Play sports because more children need to play sports and play less video games. There are children coming in, but keep in mind that those amenities they do play sports come from more children need to play sports and play less video games. But keep in mind that those amenities our taxpayers come from our parks. Okay, so by coming into there, not our recognizing that impact, potential impact, we'll never be able to. So by coming put a metric on what their impact recognizing that impact, potential impact, we'll never be able to, as Mayor Pro Tem Foster put a metric on what their impact. They may think that they're providing sufficient that space for their residents, but we know in reality said, they're going to want to enjoy think that they're providing sufficient that we have space for their residents. As a result, we know in reality development that so they're going to want to enjoy our. So where I'm coming from is that we have. As a result, there's going to be cost and development. We've talked for years about needing a park. So where I'm coming from is talked about the importance of having the park impact fee. We're now putting in a park impact fee. Years about needing a park, and the first thing we're going to do is the importance of having the park impact fee. We're now putting in a park impact fee. And so I'm not going to do is exempt how to go. Paying the park impact fee. You said for years we've needed. So I'm not saying one way or the other. I'd like to hear anything else. Any other words from the council regarding this?
Well, it's.
I'd like to hear anything else. Any other words from the council regarding
We have to start getting this money. Well, it's like Councilman Hale said, as unfair as we have to start getting this money. I hate to go back to me, who's paying as unfair feels as like they're paying. I hate to what they agreed to pay. Go back to me and now say you got to pay more. Feels like they're paying.
And let's
what they agreed to pay, and now say you got to pay more.
Nothing says we have to tell them they have to pay the full $1,000 of the park impact. Going slightly different. If the council wishes to, nothing says we have to tell them they have to pay the full $1,000. Knock it down to $500. Make it whatever the council thinks may be more fair. Adjust it for them, or the council could just decide down to $500. Make it whatever the council thinks may be more fair. Or the council could just decide to waive it altogether accordingly. But there are other options there. You can set the fee specifically for them. Councilor Vigliotti would be amended accordingly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if we were to pursue that particular course, if we were to say that those developments, so if we were to pursue that particular course, if we were to say that have to pay those developments that are currently, is that something that we would have to amend onto this in order to ensure that have to pay the ordinance rate? Is that something that we would have to amend onto this in order to ensure that the ordinance would be equally applied in the future to those?
To attach that to their DARA. Which are the fees specific to them. And I may be incorrect. So, I mean, this would still be in place to attach that to their DARA. Instead, be saying that which are the fees specific to them. Meadowbrook. So, I mean, this would still be in place for whatever else, but we will instead be saying that as if you remember back when Meads was in their initial conversations, we're going to charge you these fees. Park fees were waived. If you remember back when Meads was in their initial conversations too, all what park fees were waived for them at the very beginning. Which was contrary to, went back and renegotiated. So just keep in mind the point of the DARA kind of gives us the ability to be flexible on those fees specific to that. So just keep in mind the point of the DARA kind of gives us the ability to you do have flexibility on those fees specific to that development. So you do have flexibility in your decision making here. Mayor Pro Tem?
We should consider them paying a lesser fee.
Mayor Pro Tem?
We should consider them paying a lesser fee.
Councilor Vigliotti earlier had mentioned that he would really like some additional information. Councilor Vigliotti earlier had mentioned that he have any idea what information you can provide between now and Monday?
I will suggest that we provide
have any idea what information you can provide between now and Monday?
And we can highlight. I will suggest that we provide to the excerpts from the respective DARA's language, and we can highlight the sections that are applicable to the any park fee, as well as the language that speaks to fees that would be applicable citywide, as well as the language that speaks to. So we can fees that would be applicable citywide, excerpts from them, so you can zero right in on now. So we can pull out those DARAs and get you guys the excerpts from them, so you can zero right in on
with that, again, I'll reiterate, if we receive any additional correspondence that you are not copied on, we will send that again. I'll reiterate, if we receive any additional correspondence that you are not copied on, and I do invite, we will send that on to you developers if they're watching this evening. Any additional comments coming in, and I do invite, please feel free to send that developers if they're watching this evening. If you do wish to provide additional, I do anticipate that we will reach a decision Monday evening. Please feel free to send that along. Am I to help in appropriate in expecting that, council? I do anticipate that we will reach a decision Monday evening on this. Am I anything additional before we move on? Everyone? Councilmember Fuller? Very good.
Well, I was just going to say,
anything additional
if
before
there's
we
going
move
to
on?
be this much of a conversation, then
Councilmember Fuller?
maybe we should have. I was just going to say, offer them the opportunity. If there's going to be this much of a conversation, just so that they can answer questions or add comments as needed, back and offer them the opportunity to speak to us in person.
Council like to
just so that they
accept
can
the
answer
delegation
questions or
from
add
those
comments as
developers
needed.
on Monday evening, given the conversation we've had. Council like to accept the delegation from those
And I think
developers on Monday
evening,
evening, given the conversation we've had.
They're the ones that have an agreement with us. And I think you can limit it to the Meads Crossing one at this point in time. They're the ones that have an agreement. Meadowbrook, it's pretty straightforward unless you want to do something different. And you're talking about what you're talking about is Meadowbrook or having a new. It's pretty straightforward unless you want to do something different. But what you're talking about is mending or having a new contract if you do something different.
So with that, I'm just going to go ahead and invite
that's why I think
representatives from Meads Crossing to join the call Monday evening. I'm just going to go ahead and my intention, because it is virtual, and representatives from Meads Crossing, we will add them to join the call Monday agenda. Treat it like a delegation, because it is virtual, and then we will stay on from there. We will add them at the beginning of the agenda. Treat it like a delegation. Hold all the rest of your conversation with that until Monday, and we will move with that. I'll let you hold all the rest of your conversation with that until Monday, and we will move on. 1 second while I look at something here. Resolution 2021, excuse me 1 second while I look at something here. I believe we have one of the members of the development group. He's on the phone. I am going to ask that we have one of the members hear from him Monday evening of the development group. Him calling. He's on the phone. I am going to ask that resolution 2021-01 water allocation for January 2021. Resolution 2021-01 water allocation for January 2021. Are there any questions or
Thank you,
comments?
Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to report that the numbers themselves are the math itself. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to report that the numbers themselves are the resolution. The math itself is where it says now therefore be it enacted and ordained by the Council of the City of Taneytown. The resolution. The numbering does not start. It says now therefore be it enacted and ordained by the Council of the City of Taneytown.
That is
the numbering does not start at number 1. It starts at number 3.
That will be corrected for Monday. That is correct. That is
thank you very much.
An error made in Word, it looks like. So that will be corrected for Monday evening. Comments on the water allocation?
Thank you very much. That's it for me.
Okay. All right, hearing none, that will be up for approval on Monday evening. I will now ask Mr. Weeprick if you have anything for city manager report approval on Monday evening. I will now ask Mr. Weeprick if you have anything for city manager report.
I do want to give a quick update for those of you who aren't already aware. We've got some. I do want to give a quick update. Well 17 for those of you who came up after the council packets were released. So we're having issues at well 17. Vendor come in to pull the council packets were released. Evaluate things. We suspender come in to pull the pump. The issue basically is that the well is not pumping at the rate that it typically does. That and the issue basically is that the well is not pumping at the rate that it typically does. And motor and that are sized to pump significantly more because we have a pump we're currently pumping that are sized to pump significantly more. That the motor is not cooling properly and we're currently pumping has shortened its lifespan. That the motor is not cooling properly were not around when well 17 has shortened its lifespan. It is capable, for those of you who, and most of you were not around when well 17 was developed, are permitted to pump. It is capable of pumping. So the pump that was installed was sized with the expectation right now that So the pump that was installed to trigger the need to, with the increase our permit allocation that and associate recharge acreage with that well, trigger the need to, and that has not happened yet. Permit allocation well has essentially associate recharge acreage with that well online, and that has not happened yet. We are intending at this point to, assuming the motor is the problem line. So we do plan to replace this with the same size motor. The motor is the problem, with the expectation that we do plan to replace it with the same size motor, associating recharge acreage with the expectation that we will be going to MDE to increase our associating recharge acreage with that well. And if for some reason that does not happen, to increase and we see the motor going bad prematurely again, we're going to have to think. If for some reason that does not happen, and we see the motor going bad prematurely again, our expectations long and hard about the future of that well. And so I did want to just make you aware of that. Our expectations for its production well equipment out there. So I did want to just make you aware of that. On well 17 out by the Baptist Church. So equipment out there. Other than that, really no new issues. I do have to do a quick apology. I know that my status other than that, really no new issues. I do have to give a quick draft of the emergency policy that we talked about, status update under COVID in December. I did say that going to follow the report of the emergency policy that we talked about in the packet back in December. Done was going to follow the report. We have some time scheduled next week to from the packet after the reports delve into some aspects of that policy. Have some time scheduled ready for prime time. So delve into my apologies that some aspects of that policy and it didn't follow ready for prime time. We'll have it for you for next month. So my apologies that the report says it follows and it didn't follow. And that's about it for me, unless anybody has questions for you for next month after Jay and I have a chance to go over
questions from the council for.
And that's about it for me, unless anybody has questions.
Very good. We'll entertain any questions from the council for. Are there any questions for the city manager regarding departmental reports as they were presented? All right, Councilman, are there any questions for the city manager regarding?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to call everybody's attention to the Parks and Recreation Department report. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to call everybody's attention to the Parks and Recreation. Lorena talks about research and costs for installing a dog park in the second paragraph. But Lorena talks about research and costs. They're going to be ordering some dog waste stations to install those in the parks this spring. But that in the meantime, they're totally in favor of dog waste stations to install those in the parks. But I was under the impression that I'm totally in favor of restricted from the parks. And if we are going to be installing these, do we have to revisit the restrictions in order to make it legal to bring pets? And if we are going to be installing, maybe you can. Do we have to revisit the restrictions in order to make it legal to bring pets into the park? And I don't know, Jay, maybe you can.
This has been something the mayor's talked about, I think, for a couple of years. I think he was the one that we should have signs about this. This has been something the mayor's talked about. We're not supposed to allow dogs in the park. I think he was the one that said we should have signs about this.
Either so we're not supposed to allow dogs in the park. It's kind of like an attractive nuisance. If I drove in and saw these things, I would think, hey, putting this in is kind of like an attractive nuisance. If I drove in and saw these things, I would think, hey, you can put up a dog thing that says no dogs. You either change the rules, clean up after your dogs, and you can put up something that says no dogs. Or you rethink the idea about putting dogs in there because you want something at least to send that cohesiveness. Or you rethink the idea about putting the thing in there.
We need to think about the reality of it.
At least to send
the reality is this: our parks are open to the public. I think they are not monitored. We don't have security running in our parks. And the reality is this: our parks are open to the public. Their dog in a park. They are not monitored. We don't have security running in our parks. I think is it realistic to tell people that they cannot walk their dog in a park, i.e., athletic fields? I don't think that's realistic because of damage they can do there. I think restricting where in the park the dogs could go, i.e., athletic fields, primarily because of damage. We're not kidding ourselves. We know that people take their dogs into all the parks. Does it really bother us that much? As long as we're not kidding ourselves, we know that people take their dogs into all the parks. I think that's the key. Does it really bother us that much? As long as convincing them to clean up after their pets, I think that's the key. Hopefully providing them the means to do so while convincing them to clean up after their pets. This is a common amenity that providing them the means to do so. I think when we really get down to being realistic, this is a common amenity that you'll find in almost all parks. I don't really see a reason that dogs cannot really get down to being realistic. My main thing is that they not be on athletic fields. I don't really see a reason that dogs cannot be in our parks. But my main thing is that that's my opinion on athletic fields and probably not correct playground by currently saying you're not allowed dogs in these certain parks. That's my opinion on it. Dog receptacles in there by currently saying it does send a mixed message. My recommendation to council would be we're going to go put that we eliminate the restriction of dogs. It does send a mixed message. My recommendation to council would be state that we eliminate the restriction of dogs in certain parks. And simply state
Mr. Mayor, I'm in
where
agreement.
they
So I
cannot
guess
go within
my
those
question
parks.
would be, if we did decide to proceed with this, I mean, is it something that we
Mr.
have
Mayor,
to do
I'm in
by
agreement. So I
ordinance,
guess
or is it a
my question would
resolution,
be, if we
or,
did decide to
what's the
proceed with this, I
proper
mean, is it
path
something that we have to do by
to
ordinance,
addressing this?
or is it a
Well,
resolution, or
I'll work with Mr.
what's the
Weeper to make
proper
sure that
path
where it is
forward,
listed in
to
code, we'll
addressing
simply
this?
bring forward to council the way to amend that code. And make sure that where it is listed in code, we'll simply bring forward to council the way to amend that
the
code.
ordinance actually
I'm not sure exactly what is codified. Mr. Weeper, go ahead.
Regulate animals in the parks. The ordinance actually and posted gives us the ability to time by the city. Regulate animals it's not a change that requires an ordinance and posted from time to time by the city. We'll have to do some research. It's not a change that requires an ordinance. The ordinance does not specifically say that it's set by resolution. We'll have to do some research. Years ago, the ordinance does not specifically say that it's set by resolution. A resolution in place as they should have when they adopted some policy or manual. They would just vote resolution in place as they should have when they adopted some policy or manual. They would just vote. We would just vote to approve the proper way by adopting those things through a resolution. Do things so we may not be able to track back to the proper way by adopting those things through a resolution. Research, so we may not be able to track regulations from to a resolution, which ones need to be changed. I believe Roberts Mill is the only park, the current regulations where dogs are, and see which ones need to be changed. I believe Roberts Mill is the only park currently where dogs are permitted.
Expect next month if
but we'll do that
council
research for you.
feels this way, then something will be before you next month. Expect next month if council feels this way. Any other questions on then something will be before you next month to vote on. All right. Any other questions on departmental reports or comments? We shall move on to our legal report. Mr. Gullo, what do you have for us this evening? Satisfied? We shall move on.
Oh, good evening. These are
legal
more
report.
FYI.
Gullo, what do you have for
one
us this
easy
evening,
and
sir?
one that you really need to think about. The easy.
Oh, good evening.
These are more FYI.
Received
One easy
Claire's
email
email
regarding
regarding
the ethics
the
forms
easy
that need to be
is
filled
that
out. You
you
should
by
have
the end of the
received
month. So make
Claire's
sure you do
email
that.
regarding the
And
ethics
then the
forms
more
that need
one
to be
that you need
filled
to
out
think
and
about
returned
is
by the end of the month.
this
So
is an
make sure
election
you do
year.
that.
3
And
seats up
then
for
the
election
more
in May.
one that you need to
And
think about
while
is
May seems like
this
a far
is a
long
long
time
time
away,
away.
Claire and I are
3
already
seats
starting
up for
to
an
get
election
the
in May.
wheels moving
And
because
while
you
May
know it
seems
takes a
like
lot of
far,
lead
long
time
time
on
away,
these things.
Claire and I are already
So
starting
this
to
isn't
get
really
the
for
wheels
discussion
moving
tonight, but I
because
need
you
you
can
to
think
think
about
a lot of
this,
lead
because
time
if you do
on
this
these
for
things.
me like
So
Tarantino
this
style,
isn't
and
really
take
for
it from the
discussion
end to the
tonight,
beginning.
but I need you to
If
think
the
about
first
this,
week of
because
May
if
is
you do
our
this
election
for me like
and
Tarantino
everybody's going to
style,
start
take it
running
from
and
the end
doing
to the
their
beginning,
thing.
Around
The first week of May is our
April,
election,
and
we got to get
everybody's gonna
notices
start
sometime
running and doing
in
their
March.
thing, then
Around the
that
first
means
week of
that
April,
really we got to have everything
and we got to give
figured out
notices
by
sometime
February,
in March,
by the end of February.
That
which means the
that
last
really
time you
we
get
got to
some
have
input on
everything
things
figured
would be
out
the beginning of
by
February,
which would be your
by the end
next
of
meeting.
February.
Which
The
means the
things that
last
you're
time
gonna
you
have to
get
have
some
input
input
on,
on
I
things
know
would
the
be
mayor's
beginning
already
of February,
prepared for
which
this,
would
is
be your
we got to
next
reappoint an
meeting.
election board.
The things that you're going to
So
have
we
to have
gotta-
input
we gotta
on,
nail
I know
that
the
down.
mayor's already
Remember, those are
prepared
the
for this,
critical
is
people
you got to
that are
reappoint an
gonna
election
be
board.
involved.
We got to get
So
the
we gotta-
ethics
we gotta
commission
nail that down.
back up and
Remember,
running.
those
because,
are the
they
critical
only meet
people that are
occasionally,
gonna be
but they have to.
involved.
We got to get the
review all of
ethics
the candidate
commission
ethics forms
back up and
before we
running
can make
because
that
they
go.
only
So
meet
they have to be
occasionally,
kind of
but
enacted
they have to
again.
review.
And
all
then the
of
big thing
candidate
is
ethics we
forms
need to
before we
make
can
sure
make
we're
that
all
go.
on the
So they
same
have to
page
be kind
about
of
what you're going to
enacted
do
again.
for the election.
And then the big
what I
thing
mean
is
by that is
we need to make
you
sure
right
we're
now
all on
have
the
your
same
normal
page
election
about what
code
you're
and
gonna
it'll
do
go off
for
as
the
normal
election.
as it
And what I
was.
mean by that is
You, as part of
you
that
right
election
now
code,
have your
allow
normal
absentee
election code,
voting and it'll
which means
go
if
off
somebody
as
doesn't wanna
normal
come
as
to
it
the
was.
polls, they
You,
can
as
fill out
part
a
of that
request for an
election
absentee
code,
ballot
allow
without giving any
absentee
reason
voting, which means if
whatsoever.
somebody
They
doesn't
get an
wanna come to
absentee
the
ballot
polls,
and
they can
vote
fill out a
absentee.
request for an absentee ballot.
But if you
without
should
giving
want
any
to
reason
change your
whatsoever,
format, they
which
get an absentee
some
ballot
people
and they
have
can
talked
vote
about,
absentee.
especially
But if
due
you
to
should
how the
want to
state
change your format,
has done it, to a
some people
mail-in
have
voting
talked about,
type of election,
especially due to how the
that
state
would need to
has
be
done
done
it
to a
by,
mail-in voting
some changes to the charter. That would need to be done. You could do these partially some changes to emergency and charter. So we wouldn't have the normal code time periods, but we couldn't do it as an emergency enactment. And what I mean by that is, and I want to put a fine point on this, but we couldn't do it at the last minute. We're always allowing. And what I mean by that is, and I want to put a fine point on this, so we're very clear. They get the ballot. We're always allowing absentee ballots. Always been done that way. You guys have done that way. The state did it that way. They get the ballot. They send the ballot. That is the way the state always been done that way. You guys have done that way. General election did it that. So the one we did in May. Okay, they didn't call it the way the state, but they said if you want a mail-in ballot, you had to request the mail-in ballot, and then you got. They didn't call it absentee, but they said if you want a mail-in ballot, you had to request the mail-in ballot, and then you got a primary election sent it in or dropped it off. May. So that's normal. They mailed the way the state did the primary request. Okay, the ballots actually went out. They mailed. You could fill the ballot out to every affidavit and say there was no request. So the ballots actually went out. Is certainly fill the ballot out of doing affidavit and it's going to have a budgetary impact that if you want to go down that road you need to have different way of doing postage and it's going to have a budgetary impact that if you want to go down that road you need to have because you're talking about postage you need to deal with both affidavits in and out you need to know who these ballots are drop off ballots you got to have some more regulations dealing with affidavits all of that's possible other municipalities have done that and you got to have some more regulations dealing with turnout. All of that's possible. Other municipalities 6 months of lead time to make increased voter turnout. You need to think about this, and we need to 6 months of lead time maybe in February that what you're thinking. You need to think about this, and we need to realize that maybe in February that what you're thinking, and then we can go one way or the other. You know, but realize that it would be a significant departure. So those have been done in the past. And
on that topic,
you know, we would have
I was going to bring this up under new business. You beat me to it.
So those
we really do need to consider on that topic how I was going to bring this up under new business. You beat me to it. Obviously, it's January. We really do need to consider the election is in May. We don't know what things are going to be like in January. 4 months. Right now, the election is in May. There are people who what things are going to be like in 5 months. Will permanently change how they. There are people who publicly, will permanently change going to public places, being in public groups as a result of this pandemic. In regards to going to public places, being in public groups as a result of this pandemic. COVID-19 will be in May. We don't know anything at this point. What the state of our best COVID-19 will be in May. Be prepared for. We don't know anything at this point. The way we do our best bet is be prepared for. We need to make sure that if we continue with that process, the way we do absentee as easy as possible. And we must make sure that everybody knows that if we continue with that process, that seems to always be a thing where people come back and say, "Well, I didn't know." We must make sure that everybody knows. That's a lot of where. You know, that seems to always be a thing where people come back and say, well, I didn't know. To make sure people know that. That's a lot of where social media, if we choose to go the route, if you remember, can make sure people know that. Over a year ago now, pre-COVID media. If we choose to go the route, if you remember, started doing mail-in voting. Over a year ago now, pre-COVID, it was brought to our attention as something to consider, started doing mail-in voting. It is up to you if that's something you do want to as something to consider. Just remember, as Mr. Gullo said, there are a lot of moving pieces. If that's something you do want to consider. Just remember, as Mr. Gullo said, can be risky when you consider pieces, possibilities of intricate things like that. And so can be risky to figure this out. February, I will be bringing to you fraud or things my nominations for the Board of Elections. We need to figure this out. February, I will be bringing to you and my nominations. By that time, we need to make sure we have a good grip on how we want to handle this election. Approval, regardless of anyone's feelings. By that time, we need to make sure we understand that how we want to handle this the same way you do. Regardless of anyone's feelings must be accommodating on the pandemic, to them. You need to understand there are people who don't feel the same way you do. Are there any questions from Mr. Gullo on his legal report this evening? So that's where I'm going to leave that. Are there any questions from Mr. Gullo on his legal report this evening? Hearing none, we shall move on. In new business up for approval on Monday evening, hearing none, we shall move on. Any comments or questions on the monthly financials? On Monday evening is the monthly financial report. No. Any comments or questions on the monthly financials? Then number 2, we have accounts payables, also going to be up for approval Monday evening. Are there any questions or concerns on the accounts payables? Number 2, we have accounts payables, also going to be up for approval Monday evening. Are there any questions or concerns on the accounts payables? Very good. That brings us to the end of the agenda for the evening. Satisfied. Councilor Vigliotti, I see a hand in the air. Very good. That brings us to
thank you, Mr.
the
Mayor.
end of the agenda for the
wanted
evening.
to bring
Councilor Vigliotti, I see a hand in the air.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Given that it's a wanted new year and I've got something up under new business, had a couple of new ideas that I wanted to introduce. I figured this might given that it's a good time to do it. I've got a bunch evening. I've had a couple of new ideas. I'd like to bring up one idea. This might be one of these ideas to kick off this evening. Something that I think if you'll grant me the permission, I'd like to bring up one idea. Council, one of these ideas to kick off the new year. Something that I think I'd be happy to something I think share that help benefit the council moving forward. Thank you very much. So it's a pretty simple, straightforward thing. I want to introduce the idea of like a summary sheet or a cover sheet. It's a pretty simple, straightforward thing. I want to introduce the idea of like whether it's a resolution or cover sheet, an ordinance or whatever the case is. I would love to see some. So whether it's a resolution or an ordinance or whatever the case is that talks about the basics of the kind of legislation is, what the number is. What also includes some important information that talks about the basics of the kind of legislation is, what the number is, but also the reasoning for why it's coming up, when it's coming up, and the reasoning behind it in general. The reasoning who wrote it. For why it's coming up, when it's coming up, whether any members of council are acting as sponsors. Who wrote it? Of course, as you know, within the code, and whether there is a section about council acting as sponsoring. Of course, as you know, within the code, the way that we work now, there is a section about council members sponsoring where we do the motion and the second to vote on. I mean, I know the way that we work now, council member really does want to bring something up. Motion and the second we should have. But if council member really does want to bring something up, I think that's something that we should have. And of course, any data relevant history of when we receive the materials in our packets. The reason why, and of course, any data relevant is that every so often that legislation we end up with things in our packets. The reason why we go into a meeting not quite knowing is that every so often we do end up with things in our packets, and we go into a meeting not quite knowing. While we do end up finding those things out through the origin of the meeting, I would feel a lot more comfortable, and I think council would benefit a lot more. While we do end up finding those things out through the course of a meeting, peripheral information a lot more comfortable, and I think council would benefit prior to going into the meeting. If the contextual, going into the meeting, we knew what all the background information was, and then we could have a discussion prior to going into the substance. Like going into the meeting, we knew what all the background information was. And then we can have a discussion about the way that I would equate this. It's almost like the car showing up at your house and being told I guess drive the car. The way that I would equate this, it's almost like who drove the car in the first showing up at your house and being told, well, you can drive the car. But I know it would take a little bit in the first additional time for why is the car putting together of an ordinance or a resolution. And I know it would take a little bit. But I also think that it would benefit us in terms of the clarity, transparency, efficacy. And again, I also think that it would benefit us in terms of clarity, transparency, efficacy. And so again, even as council, if everybody's amenable to it, I'd like to be able to present something to council. And so if if everybody's amenable to vote, I'd like to be able to present something to council next month, potentially.
You're talking about presenting something to vote on regarding what you're requesting?
Right, like the request for vote on regarding. Again, I don't know whether it would just be a policy that we enact, right? Like something that we have to go by way of resolution. Again, I don't know whether it would just be a policy that we enact, or this is what we're about to vote on. This has to go by way of resolution. This is who wrote it. This is who sponsored it. A sheet that says background contextual information that we don't always get. This is who wrote it. This is who sponsored it.
I think I see where you're coming from. It seems like you've been reading a lot of state bills recently. We don't always
get otherwise.
Their cover sheet seems to include a lot of those. I think I see where you're coming from. Seems like you've been reading a lot of state bills recently. I don't think it needs to be anything as their cover sheet seems to include a lot of those, or a resolution or anything like that. I think it is simply a request. I don't think it needs to be anything as official as those staff that things be or a resolution or anything like that. I think it is simply a request that will take council substantial time to put together. That things be put in this way. Understand that I will work with that will take staff substantial time to put it in. I think then we'll determine how we'll work with staff how well figure out a format that we want to put it in, and then determine how ease of getting that information together. How well a lot of it, if I may say, is going to come from their ease of getting how much information together, and a lot of it involved in a lot of these processes. Is going to come from about things how much like resolutions and ordinances is willing to be involved. There's nothing preventing council members from. If you think about things like bringing those ordinances, if you have, there's nothing preventing council members. Not everything has to come from staff bringing those forward. Attorney. If you have vetted ideas like that, but it's not saying that not everything has to come from staff. Keep that in mind as members of the council. it will be vetted by sponsoring something. It's not saying that has to be drafted by them. So keep that in mind. You're welcome to do council. Put something together, sponsoring something to myself says it should be on the agenda. You are welcome to do so through the process. Make sure something together to be vetted by everyone. To myself, and a lot of that is going to be doing some of that research as you make sure you leave time for it to be vetted by everyone. Unclear of those processes, going to be doing some of that research as you construct said things. Mr. Weepick, Mr. Gallo, know unclear of those processes. Please let me know. We've all done a couple of these ourselves. Mr. Weepick, Mr. Gallo, I like where you're going with that. We just need to see how well done a couple it'll work in reality with a limited. No, I like where you're going with that. We just need to see how well it'll work in reality. People putting with a limited staff, but I like at the state level they have.
I thank you for that, Mr. Mayor. And again, I'm not, I don't want anything that has to be like multiple pages long, like a 2-sentence summary or something. I thank you for that, Mr. Mayor. And to give us our bearings, I don't want anything that has to be, again, and I'll certainly just speak for myself summary or something, just to, again, to give us our bearings going into these things. Again, and I'll certainly just speak for myself in this instance, for me, at least to, again, to have find out these things information going into the meeting rather than saying, okay, well, we have this and where to have that contextual information going into the meeting rather than saying, okay, well, we have this and where did this
we'll kind of research that a little bit and see what kind of options we can come up with. I understand where you're coming from.
Thank you very much.
We'll kind of research that a little bit and see what kind of options we can come up with for the evening before we
thank you very much.
Go home and go to bed. Anyone else from council have anything they'd like to throw in on new business for the evening before we go home and go to bed? With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. No. Okay. And very good. Second. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion from Councilman Haynes. Second from. Do I have a second? Mayor Pro Tem Foster.
Second.
All in favor of adjourning. Motion from Councilman Haynes. Signify with your thumbs up. From Mayor Pro Tem Foster. All in favor of adjourning for the evening. We're going to go unanimous in favor. I'll see you all Monday evening. Thank you very much. Is anyone opposed? We're going to go unanimous in favor. I'll see you all Monday evening. Thank you very much.